Hello and welcome to the Garden of the Black Roses. This is fanfiction. Ragnarok Online Fanfiction. Ooh. Okay. Sorry. More typo weird letters here, so yeah. Alright. Chapter 17. This is Loki's castle? Huge, isn't it? Well, he is a god. You'd expect him to have a huge castle. Lack and the rest walked up the stone pathway to the large double doors. Tadakono and Phenomenon looked around and spotted Hell staring at them from a large stained glass window. Loki, Balos hissed, drawing his bow. Everyone followed suit, watching Loki skip down the stairs and along the path towards them. Is it just me, or is he in a good mood? Lack, Loki said, with the biggest grin on his face. Welcome to my castle. I know you must be tired, and I must insist you come to the arena. But I must insist you come to the arena. Loki steered a confused Lack and walked quickly, pushing him. I have someone you'll want to meet. Stunned, Lack walked, following Loki. Microx gave an angry growl and motioned for everyone to follow. Chibi. Lack stood facing her in the center of the arena. Are you all right? Chibi drew her sword and pointed it at him. You need to duel, Loki explained to him. Chibi herself requested it. He danced over and wrapped his arms around Chibi. See, she's all ready to go. You see? Lack took a deep breath and pulled his gloves tight. Settling into fighting position, he asked, Are you sure about this, Chibi? You know my strength and my skill as much as I know yours. I'm sure, she replied, her voice monotone. I'm counting on your knowledge. Lack blinked in surprise. Chibi moved her sword into a guard position. Don't hold back. If you say so. Lack leapt at her, casting blessing and increased agility on himself. She's counting on my knowledge. What does she mean? It started, Momo said, watching through Chibi's windows. He's holding back. I know, Chibi replied. He's already off balance because she said she was counting on his knowledge. He's trying to work out what the meaning behind that is. You knew all this would happen? I mean, your other self saying that. Chibi nodded, her eyes fixed on the window in front of her. How? I noticed when she paused once while talking to Loki. Our bodies still retain any habits we have. I have a habit of leaving things out. I have a habit of leaving things out that I know Lack will protest against. But I also have a habit of giving him subtle clues on things. Her eyes searched Lack's image in the window. I knew that if that was true, then my body would hint to him about Azoth if he had it on him. That's a huge chance you took. I know. Her eyes spotted the Azoth. But I trust him to know what to do. Chibi, Momo asked tentatively, Will you set me free? I'll do what I can in my power to set you free, Chibi said, pausing for a bit, making Momo feel uncomfortable. But I can't promise that I can. Loki is much more powerful than even Lack. She looked at Momo uncertain. It's the most I can offer you. It's all I was expecting, Momo replied. His hand moved to take hers, but paused halfway. I don't want you to be recaptured. He firmly forced himself to take her hand. Lack changed into a stalker in mid-flight and brought his daggers down towards Chibi. Raising her right arm, she blocked his daggers and sliced out his waist with her sword. Micrex and the others called from the sidelines to Lack. He ignored them and locked blades with Chibi. His crossed daggers pressed onto the blade of her saber. An explosion threw them apart. Lack noticed Chibi draw another bomb from her pouch with her right hand and flick them at him. Knowledge. What could she mean? Lack leapt backwards away from the flames. Chibi drew marine spears and plant bottles, again with her right hand, and scattered them over the field. Marine spear! Summon Flora! Lack sliced a dryad in two and leapt over a geographer. His eyes watched as she drew another bomb with her right hand. That's it, isn't it? She changed to using potions to hint at me. Looking carefully, he saw a bruise peeping out between the cuts in her glove. I need to get that glove off her. Turning back to a champion, he stood still, watching her. Chibi threw the bomb at him. Lack punched it hard, making it fly back. Chibi shielded herself from the explosion with her right arm, reducing her glove to shreds. Moving her sword to block Lack's twin daggers, block Lack's twin daggers. Lack pushed her backwards, exchanging his left dagger for Azoth. Chibi raised her sword and brought it down hard towards Lack's head. Without thinking, Lack stabbed her wrist with Azoth, forcing her to release her sword. The bracelet fell to the ground with a thump. Loki screamed and rushed towards Lack and Chibi, his own daggers raised high. Micrex and Phenomenon blocked his path, sending both daggers flying. You'll pay for tricking me, Loki growled, disappearing from the arena in a puff of smoke. You can all die here. Lack sat holding Chibi, his eyes soft and concerned. She sat up and took Azoth from him. Chibi? Lack started, confused with her silence. You all right? She stood up and moved away from him, her hand reaching up to touch her left eye. Moving her hand away, Lack could see blood covering her hand. You're bleeding! He cast heal on her. Don't heal me, Chibi said, pushing his hands away. We need to deal with the doppelgangers first, and save Momo. She turned to face him and noticed Lack looked hurt. I don't need to be healed. She reached into her pouch and brought out a bottle of water and a piece of cloth. This happened a while back. Loki didn't bother to clean it up. She brought the water over her eye and then gently wiped the blood away. Looking back at Lack, she smiled and added, It's permanent. Lack stared at her eyes. Instead of a pair of sky blue eyes, she had one blood red eye, one sky blue eye. How did this happen? Long story. She pulled Lack's arm to get him moving. We can thank Momo for it when we break him from Loki's bracelet. Phenomenon and Tadakono each took a hold of Chibi's shoulders. I think we all need to rest and recover. Tadakono eyed her right wrist. And be healed. There's no time, Chibi murmured, pulling off one of her ribbons and wrapping it around her wrist. Loki now knows we have an item that can remove his bracelet off Momo. To ensure his plan isn't completely ruined, he'll either place Momo under a new control method and send doppelgangers that were going to be sent to Fight Club at us, or find a way to take my Azoth so we can't free Momo. She pulled away from their hands. He could easily do all three while you're healing me. Tadakono took a hold of her right wrist, squeezing it tightly. Chibi's eyes, watering at the pain, stared at him defiantly. How about this? He said, not letting go of her wrist. Since both you and Lack need rest, we'll split up into 2 groups. That way we aren't all being idle. Lack nodded in agreement at this. Reyna, Micrex, John Flora, and Baloas go into Loki's castle and find Momo. Myself, Phenomenon, Lady Deathstrike, Lack, and you stay here. A divided power going into Loki's castle is better than nothing, Baloas added. Besides, Momo is originally Mike's problem. Guildsman. Micrex gave Baloas a thump on the head with his poleaxe in response. I was only joking. Jibs, Lady Deathstrike said softly, placing her hand where Tadakono's hand held Chibi's wrist. Eventually this wrist will become unable to move. If that happens mid-battle, it doesn't help any of us, as we rely on both yourself and John as support. All right, Chibi sighed and relaxed. Tadakono let go of her wrist and cast heal with his Vedata clip. Chibi looked at her Azoth and then at Micrex. He raised his eyebrow and got off his peko. Don't lose it, she said, handing it to him. You need it to free Momo. And I will murder you if it isn't returned to me. I went through hell and back to find the ingredients to make it. He was taken aback. I won't lose it, he replied, tucking it into his belt. I won't let Loki take it either. He ruffled her hair. You've gotten stronger. Much more than you were in Velvet Touch of Inishi. He glanced at Lack. Maybe because you're beside someone who brings out the best in you better than I could. He jumped onto his peko. Let's get moving, he called to the rest, and they left for Loki's castle. Lack? Phenomenon glanced at him. Lack nodded, and together they pulled Chibi down to the ground so she was sitting. Lady Deathstrike and Tadakono sat down in front of them. Tell us why your left eye is blood red. Phenomenon took a hold of Chibi's arm and cast heal. Chapter 18. And that's why, Chibi finished, ignoring the tingling feeling in her wrist. It's nothing really too serious, but it is permanent, since it happened within my spiritual power. She gave a small, evil smile. Maybe I should have given Momo a taste of his own medicine. But why red? Lady Deathstrike asked, confused. I have a friend whom that happened to, and her eye went grey. It lost colour. Even when she approached Ia to see if it could be fixed, Ia told her that her spiritual power absorbed the colour to prevent further damage to that area. But it seems you've gained more power, and if I'm not mistaken... She came closer to Chibi until their noses touched. Your eye isn't a human eye anymore. It's more chemical in structure. She looked sideways at Phenomenon, Lack, and Tadakono. I don't know how to describe it in lay terms, but I'm sure Chibi understands what I'm saying. Chibi closed both eyes, not wanting Lady Deathstrike to analyze it any more. Don't look deeper. It'll hurt both you and me to know the truth. Possessing Azoth cost me much more than you know. Warping it cost even more. Don't look deeper. Chibi felt Lady Deathstrike move away, and she let out a small sigh of relief. Tadakono, Phenomenon, and Lack looked at each other and then at Lady Deathstrike. She shrugged and waited till Chibi opened her eyes again. Can we talk in private? She asked. Chibi froze and stiffly nodded. Lady Deathstrike got up and extended her hand to Chibi, and they moved away from the three boys until they were out of hearing range. I saw it. You're not completely human anymore, are you? Chibi shook her head. Is it because of Loki? Or your quest to find Azoth? I think both, Chibi replied. When I went in search of Azoth, I had to find many rare items. Each one stripped away a piece of my spiritual power. I found out how to create Azoth by chance. It came to me while I was studying the old texts in Yuno Library. What did you need? Lady Deathstrike asked. If you can't tell me because it breaks the alchemist code, then don't. I needed footprints of cat, roots of stone, and breath of soul, all of which were ancient and well-guarded items of the gods. Chibi sighed, and then added, along with a moonlit dagger, I had to climb to the summit of Mount Milgenair and call Odin to create Azoth with the items. She paused and took a deep breath. During the creation process, I passed out. When I awoke, Ia was standing near me holding Azoth. She told me that from collecting the ancient items alone, I risked my life thread. She had healed me, but because I had holes in my spiritual power, she used sinews of bear to stitch the remaining pieces together. She warned me that I could disappear if I take on another quest similar to Azoth, or do an experiment that is beyond my current abilities. Lady Deathstrike knew where she was going. You experimented and warped Azoth's nature to allow Lack and Mike Rex the ability to use your Azoth. That's more than any alchemist class can do. Chibi nodded. The sinews of bear within me absorbed most of the shock, but caused my own structure to warp slightly. Tadakono probably feels it when he uses Resurrect on me, but it's not as effective as it should be. Ia visited me the day I warped Azoth. She granted me my ability. To turn into a cat? Lady Deathstrike asked. No, Chibi replied. That was Kashi after my dealings with Athan. What ear granted me was the ability to see a certain distance into the future. The distance is short, and it's always a definite reading regardless of choices. And then, to seal my spiritual power, so no more can be damaged, she placed 4 pieces of Thanatos within my heart. Because of the darkness of those 4 pieces, I can't touch any holy items without suffering damage to my life power. She told me that as time goes on, my spiritual power will heal. It will remove a piece of Thanatos. Pieces of Thanatos? Lady Deathstrike looked confused. As in pieces from Thanatos Tower? Not exactly, Chibi explained. The 4 pieces of Thanatos are fragments that represent the 4 beasts that guard Thanatos himself. Agony, despair, sorrow, and hatred. If I was to set foot in Thanatos Tower, no monster there would attack me because of these fragments. When Loki caught me, his use of a Loki's whisper excited the pieces, causing them to spread physically throughout my body. I am basically now demonic in nature. Any holy weapon brought against me will hurt me more than it would a normal human. So then, Lady Deathstrike said slowly, formulating what she wanted to say next. What do you see in the future? Towards the end of this day, Chibi began, her eyes going dim and black. Rena will return to us. She will warp us into a room with 3 doppelgangers, and more trying to break the door down outside. Mike and John will be fighting Gemini, and old allies will come to our aid from a guild older than Fight Club. Loki will lose to the power of the combined guilds, and be bound by the power of Fawcetti and Thor. Chibi's eyes returned to their normal state, and looked up at Lady Deathstrike. We'll win this battle, if we wait for Rena. But as far as I can see, Loki won't stay still even after being bound. Chibi poked her pouch absently. I wonder how far in the future what I saw before is. If Lack goes to Nameless Island, I need to make sure he doesn't go. It shouldn't be too far ahead now. How will you get the boys to stay that long? Lady Deathstrike asked. Chibi removed her pouch and sat down on the ground. Tipping it upside down, she counted the contents. You're low on stock. Lady Deathstrike sat down next to Chibi and helped her sort the various potions, herbs, leaves, and bottles. I'll need to go hunting, Chibi replied, lifting up a condensed red potion and giving it a shake. And visit the alchemist shop in Yuno for more bottles. She smiled evilly. I can send the boys on an errand to Yuno, make one wait for Rena, and we can go hunting for herbs and other things. Sounds good, Lady Deathstrike replied, mimicking Chibi's smile. Let's head back. Phenomenon stabbed a stick into the ground and began to uproot a glistening red rock. How long do you think they're going to talk for? Pocketing the rock, he looked up. Ah, they're coming back. Chibi's going to send us on an errand for her, Lack mused, watching them come back. His eyes clearly seeing Chibi's saber and pouch had switched sides. She looked through her pouch just now. He looked back at the 2. So who stays and who goes where she sends us? They looked at him with raised eyebrows. If you don't believe me, Chibi's pouch is now on her left, and her saber on her right. I'll stay, Phenomenon replied. If Mike and the others get into trouble, a supportive class would be more beneficial than a fighting class. He looked at Chibi and Lady Deathstrike as they came close. "Lack," Chibi said with a wink, "can you get me some bottles, test tubes and medicine bowls from Yuno?" She shook her pouch for emphasis. "I'm low on supplies, and I think that if Mike and the others get into trouble, and I'm to be support, I'll need more supplies than I have." Lack nodded and got up to create a warp portal to headquarters so he could talk to the warper there. Tadakono looked at Chibi expectantly. "You guys knew I was going to ask." Tadakono, Phenomenon, and Lack nodded. "I assume Fen's staying here?" "Tada." Chibi thought for a bit. "Can you go to the leather worker in Yuno and give them this?" She took off her pouch and saber and set it next to Phenomenon. Then she took off her belt and gave it to Tadakono. "I need 2 more loops for pouches. Then go to the weaver and ask for 2 pouches that alchemist class use. If she happens to ask what type, tell her the theta model." Chibi opened her pouch and gave him a small blue gem with a silver cat head drawn inside. "Use this insignia when you go to see them. Lack, you may need to use this too when you get the bottles. It's for them to know that I sent you." Lack nodded and cast warp portal. They both jumped in. "You're going herb hunting?" Phenomenon asked. "I don't think you'd be asking for more loops on your belt if you were low on stock. You're planning on supporting us properly, aren't you?" Chibi nodded and smiled. "Dia and I are going to hunt herbs, and, if we find any, items to make the potions into condensed potions. It'll be lighter for me to carry that way." She and Lady Deathstrike wished him luck and left for the fields of Yuno. That'll be 1,500 zenny, the leather worker said to Tadakono and Lack, who stared at each other in shock at the price. "You don't have that much on you?" They shook their heads. "I can't lower the price since my wares are alchemist's specialty." "Oh!" Tadakono brought out Chibi's gem. "I forgot about this. Though I guess Chibi didn't mean for it to be payment." The leather worker took the gem and looked at it with a trained eye. "I can't sell that to you." "I know," the leather worker replied. "The creator Chibi sent you, did she?" Tadakono and Lack nodded. "I recognize her insignia. Alchemist class gets special discounts when they present their insignia that they received upon graduation from the Alchemist Society." They stared at him confused. "I see. Because you aren't Alchemist class, you don't understand. Alchemists and creators receive an insignia that certifies them to practice alchemy. It allows them to attain things like Seed of Life without repercussions. Alchemists usually have a clear gem, but when an alchemist exceeds expectations and attain the level of creator, the Alchemist Society changes the color of the gem to represent the color of their clothing." He placed 2 fingers onto the gem and drew out a small pouch. "Payment of 50,000 zenny has been received. I'll start on the work immediately. Would you like to take a seat?" He motioned over to the lounge area near the main door. Chibi cut down a green plant and took a few of its leaves. "Dear?" Lady Deathstrike looked up at her with a few white herbs in her hand. "I think I should call Ear. I need to know if Loki has really affected me or not. Lady Deathstrike nodded and placed the white herbs into the mini pouch Chibi had with her. Chibi closed her eyes and called out mentally, Ia, Ia, can you hear me? You always seem to be around when I need you. Can you come out, please? You called? Ia asked softly. Lady Deathstrike fell backwards, not expecting her to appear so suddenly. Ia touched Chibi's cheek. Loki's done a lot of damage, hasn't he? I'll see what I can do, but you'll never be truly human again. Chibi nodded. Most of those who study alchemy lose part of their humanity anyway through their experiments. Ia placed a hand on her head. I'll just lose more than the average alchemist. Lady Deathstrike sat, leaning against a tree, watching in interest. Ia closed her eyes and sent her power into Chibi. Sinews of bear seem to be holding well, and the spread of the pieces of Thanatos isn't as bad as I first thought too. They'll still disappear once your spiritual power heals. Your left eye has retained a demonic property that will stay that way. She reached out her hand and plucked a bottle of fluorescent liquid from the air. I'll just lighten the colour so it's not so striking. She clutched the bottle hard until it broke. The liquid flowed up to Chibi's eye, causing it to go from blood red to a pale pastel pink. Now to do something about that Loki's whisper. "2 pouches for an alchemist?" the weaver asked in surprise. "Most alchemists only need 1. Is Chibi a potion worker? From what I've heard, she's more offensive in battle rather than supportive." Lack frowned. "She's usually supportive for us." The weaver's expression bothered him. She isn't strong enough to be on the offensive. "That's where I guess you underestimate her," the weaver replied, drawing a small pouch from the gem in Tadakono's hand. "Have you ever wondered where Chibi gets the zenny to pay for her alchemical supplies? Or where she gets the herbs and other items she needs to make potions and other concoctions?" "She gets some from me," Tadakono replied. Lack nodded as well. "But even so, that's still only a portion of what she normally has." "She's the strongest member in the Alchemist Society," the weaver replied proudly. "She always comes to me for repairs to her clothing and pouches. When she's in a really good mood, she asks for my specialized pouch that is alchemical in nature. It places items into a storage system. The pouch itself is incredibly light." The weaver looked at them, her eyes sparkling. "Did Chibi say what pouch for alchemist? Or what type of pouch for alchemists? There's a fair few types available." "Chibi said theta type," Tadakono replied. "What is the theta type, by the way?" "Theta type?" the weaver asked, her eyes round with surprise. Chibi has never specifically asked for that type of pouch before. The theta type allows the user to store up to 300 items at any given time. Chibi usually asks for either sigma or gamma types, as she says they are light and carry a lot. The theta type is also light, but difficult to manage if the user isn't used to using them. It's not a type one uses outside of the laboratory. The weaver looked at them carefully. "Are you sure she said theta?" "Positive," Lack replied firmly. She was certain about it too. The weaver sighed and shook the pouch she held. 500,000 zeni received for 2 theta pouches. She prepared the money for them too. She pointed to a tea room. You can wait there while I create them. It'll take a few hours, so feel free to make lunch or whatever in there. Just make sure you clean up after yourselves. Lack and Tadakono had been sitting in the tea room for a few hours, talking things over while they had heard from the leatherworker and the weaver. What interests me is that Chibi gets an incredible discount. I wonder if it's to do with her insignia, Tadakono mused. Lack shrugged and absently stirred his coffee with a silver spoon. You think the alchemist store would give a discount as well? I'm actually wondering about the theta pouches, Lack replied. She said that one doesn't normally use them in battle, but Chibi will be. I wonder what type of pouch she's been carrying. If it's the one I made for her, the weaver said, appearing at the door with the 2 pouches in her hand. It's an alpha pouch. A specially made pouch that has 8 separate pockets. Each pocket can hold 20 of the same item. It's an experimental item I made that she was curious in trying out. She gave the pouches to Lack, who promptly placed them in his pocket. She's going to get frustrated using those, unless she's going to use them like a beta pouch. Seeing their confused looks, she sighed. A beta pouch is a pouch that forces items out that the alchemist is using for a creation process. It's good for speed creation, where the alchemist is making many of the same or similar items at once. Actually, the one she currently carries is the one that Black Rose gave her, Lack replied, not looking up from his coffee. She prefers it because, for some reason, it's easier to manage than an alpha pouch. Tadakono tapped the table near him. Looking up, Lack noticed the weaver had frozen. Something wrong? She's using a pouch that was especially made for a hidden god? The weaver's voice was shaking. Chibi shouldn't be able to handle a pouch of that caliber. Pouches for hidden gods are imbued with an ancient item, so they can withstand the powers a hidden god uses. A human alchemist would burn out their ability from using a pouch like that long term. Chibi has Azoth, Tadakono replied, unsure if his logic was right. If she can handle Azoth, then she should be able to handle a pouch made for the hidden gods. Noticing the weaver looked even more shocked, he added, She had the pouch Black Rose gave her for almost a month now, and she's still as strong as ever. Did Chibi get Azoth alone? The weaver asked. Her voice low, causing both Lack and Tadakono to sit upright. Because no one has gone on the quest for Azoth alone and survived. I'm meaning that their life thread was cut somewhere along the journey. Lack and Tadakono looked at her, deeply concerned. That's it. I had to ad-lib a bit there too. Oh my goodness. Just reading this and it's like repetitive and I'm like editing on the fly. But I'm not editing it on here, if that makes sense. Like I've got my phone in one hand, the recording device in the other, so I'm like reading off my phone. But I'm not editing on my phone as I'm recording. I'm just editing as I'm speaking. But yeah. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you think. But I will see you in the next one. And as always, remember, let your imagination grow wild. Bye for now.